Hello, and thanks for listening to this final project for EHRD 611. Today, we're focused on organizational change and development through personnel management rooted in athletic practices. So in that first slide, you may have noticed that I crossed talent out and replaced it with personnel. I will touch on that more in just a second, but it is a key concept here because we need to reframe what we label our human capital as. Personnel helps to achieve that objective. There are two stages when implementing this plan. That's going to be the pre-val stage and the eval stage, both of which will allow for you as an entity to effectively manage the assets within an organization. Pre-val short for pre-evaluation, eval short for evaluation. In addition, we will establish a metric for evaluation just for the purposes of this project, but I will state early on, the metric is less important than the consistent implementation of it. We will then wrap with some additional notes of the team building process, both from an active and passive point of view. Really, once you get into team building, once the work starts, it never really ends, especially when you are looking to actively manage your personnel. So, why personnel? To revisit that first slide, it sounds better, but practically when talking about employees, assets, or prospects, the talent portion should be implied. I will say this from my time in athletics, the talent was usually evident. If you didn't have the talent, there was no discussion that was going to be had. Sounds harsh, but when someone lacks talent that you need for your team, why would you engage them? And if you already have someone who doesn't have talent, you should probably find a way to get rid of them. I say that to say, referring to people as talent really cheapens them as a group. Plus, inherently, talent is an individualized trait as it refers to aptitude or skill. Personnel, it refers to people employed within an organization. By definition, it creates the concept of team, and in athletics, it is how we refer to our players. Personnel is wide ranging with its use. It can be external or internal, but reframing it helps shape a different mindset that allows for a new plan or process to be implemented. So we're going to start with the very beginning on this. Say you've been brought into an organization to head up personnel from the top down. It's a daunting task because you wouldn't be here unless there was a need for you to be. Step one is going to be identifying the personnel that exists within the organization. You just have to know what you have, how long you've had it before moving anywhere else to a different stage. This in theory would be digitalized in an HRIS system, but assuming you don't have all the data, you would want to work with individual departments to collect it. An example would be maybe getting knowledge of how many people exist within a particular demographic in your organization. According to the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, by 2029, more than 38.5 million people aged 35 to 44 are going to be within the demographic, outnumbering all other age groups within the labor force. And that would be your millennial group. That's an important piece of data to have when you are deciding how you construct your team. And again, that's one example, but those are things that you would like to know as you continue to look at your personnel. You would then do that by identifying some of the strengths of your team. It's really easy to dive in right away to what hasn't been working, but you want to really look at what's been working well. Not just strengths of the individual, but broadly, what things have been successful in the time that you weren't there. Again, when you go into the evaluation piece, you're going to be doing a more in-depth dive of things, but take a look. Has the team been around together for a while? Do you have good depth within the department with a lot of people who are able to come in and work? When you find good things during this stage, you want to acknowledge them and keep them because as you begin to implement other changes, people will be less resistant if they can look around and see some similarities in their environment, especially if they are things that worked well. This last part is where sometimes it gets mixed reviews. Some folks love to pick away at flaws, and others get uncomfortable because it puts you in a negative headspace and you have to confront some very difficult topics. But there is a balance, and this is where you get to broadly look at what has and has not worked without diving too deep into the specific individuals. This is where things like the Peter Principle come into the equation. Has an area of a team been underperforming consistently for a long period of time? Have there been any changes? In every hierarchy, according to Lawrence Peter and Raymond Hull's book, in every hierarchy, an employee tends to rise to his or her level of incompetence, and they outline exactly how that can inhibit individuals and teams alike. Identify those trends and signals as priorities to look into when you dive a little bit further into the evaluation process. As the pre-val continues, this is where you want to start building the foundation of what you want to create in the form of a team, system, culture, personnel. How do you want people to function within the system? And that's where you start at. Do you want to redefine roles? Do you want to recreate how people work? These are questions you want to ask in order to really start creating a system in which people can not just function but thrive. Moving on, what is the culture that you want and how does the system enable it? Do you prioritize well-being or do you want to prioritize production? How will the team be scaled to fit the system within that culture? These are all important to ask and to develop before you begin managing human capital because people are very willing to leave their roles if they don't like them. Between April and September of 2021, more than 24 million Americans all left their jobs, which is an all-time record. So before you get to composing your team, put the pieces in place to understand how that team is going to be composed. It's a very intentional process, something that if you do it right, should set you up for success going forward. When you want to put this in practice, so now we're kind of in between a little bit of that pre-val and eval stage, but when you're putting it in practice, you have to define it. Evaluation is an estimate, appraisal, value, rate, all done to assess the mean or judge something with respect to its worth or significance. Saying that sounds dehumanizing, but it's vital. Someone's worth to your team is what they can provide. It's the same to you and the reason why they would have you building this system. The goal of an evaluation is to get information that can be used to make an informed decision now and in the future. The outcome of that goal in a perfect scenario is you have the understanding of how to better manage your personnel. The importance isn't in the numbers, it's in the data. This just means having a full set of information that can tell you a better story than just isolated metrics. So what does that look like if you're going to establish your metric? When you go back, you should have defined your system and culture, and that was a couple slides ago with the pyramid. This is where you define your personnel. I'll explain the graphic in a second, but understand it needs to be designed with your plan in mind. It needs to be consistent so that you can evenly evaluate personnel. Nothing equal or equitable, but make it so that you can get a pure set of data. It also needs to be malleable. In the book in which I'm shaping a lot of my doctoral research around how to think about hiring, Play Smarter to Win the Talent Management Game by Lex Sisney, he stated a bad system defeats a good person every single time. You need to gather organizational leadership together, follow a good organizational transformation process to identify and create buy-in for the right strategy, values, and structure for the next stage of the business cycle. What you need now will be different than what you need a year from now, as will the people who will be available. As for the graphic, that was designed while I was coaching, and it was a system of evaluation that we used, and I just retrofitted it to fit this project broadly. All it's designed to do is provide a hard set of data to look at. It is labor intensive as it requires paying attention to more than just the surface level of a prospect, but through the process, you should at the minimum be able to give yourself the ability to make an informed decision on someone's abilities. And that's really all you could want or ask for when going through the process of building a team. Circling back to the beginning of this presentation, those broad strengths and weaknesses Now is the spot where you want to explore those a little bit further. As the evaluation begins in-house, understanding your current personnel helps you connect those dots a little further. You want to identify some of those strengths and shortcomings. If your thought process is bringing in people before assessing, you're already putting yourself at a deficit. In saying that, though, evaluate your current personnel based on what you want to build. If somebody's a poor fit, you may want that data. If somebody is being underutilized based on what this system can provide, that's good to know as well. Don't do it in a vacuum. Evaluate everything based on what you put together in terms of system and culture, because it's better to find a mismatch now than later. Collaborate, especially with other agents, and especially if those others have worked with each other for a while. It may help the evaluation process and it will keep it more open. It will also help the understanding of what is being built and creating a culture of commitment, which can have significant and positive impact on job performance and workforce retention, per Scott Brum. All right, again, a graphic, it's here for aesthetics, but it does put some of what I've said into practice. The collection of numbers is one way to evaluate, but it is not the only way. This was the template we used to evaluate players, but again, it was retrofitted for this presentation. What you want to do, however, is use your evaluation metric to confirm the strengths and weaknesses you identified early on. This just puts a set of data to go with it to really see how good or bad it actually is. Make sure you're being honest with these numbers as you're building a team structure. The wrong data or misusing the data could lead to you making the wrong choice, which could hinder your team and potentially individual development. But also let the data tell the story, because it can tell any story that you want it to. The numbers exist. What you do with them is going to matter a whole lot more than what the numbers say in a vacuum. All right, so how the data is used is up to you, but if you spent time collecting it, I would say you should probably use it for something. People are not a monolith, and individualized data will help you make better decisions of how teams function within your structure. Sports is all about fit. You're masking strength, or you're maximizing strengths while masking weaknesses. Use this information to put people in the best position to succeed. Not that you can mask all weaknesses or even want to inhibit their developing into strengths, but people's strengths are what make them special. Highlight them. Continue to manage personnel through an informed process. Performance dips, struggles, even growth should not be major shocks to your system if you understand what you're working with and have evaluated properly. This graphic, I heavily leaned on during my coaching days, and it just outlines different tiers of personnel ranging from your stars all the way down to serviceable bodies on A to C minus scale. A statement I love challenging all the time from people is when they say, I want A players on my team. We need to have all A players. Think about that for a second. No, you don't, because you will have to manage all of their personalities and all of their egos and everything that comes with having an A player, including paying them. There is a space for role players, niche skill sets that maybe do a single function very well, or they don't do anything great, but they do a lot of things good. Or, just like you see on the graphic, they're a warm body that can fill a void. There's a space for anybody in an organization if the system is built right and you are willing to accept that and find a space for them. You've evaluated your team, so you want to determine their roles based on that evaluation. Maybe somebody being underutilized can take on more responsibility if they are interested. Maybe someone's struggling and you can see how their experience can be made better with a reshuffling of their duties or their role. Continue evaluating personnel, especially if there are changes made in roles. A change in a role, if agreed upon, should be positive for both sides, and if not, you need to reassess why. Inform your personnel of the process. Now, you don't need to inform them of the data, but definitely let them know that they're being evaluated. That's a good thing. Let them know that you want to understand how they can function best. Gather data in different ways. You can drop bait in the wild and see what you catch. Nothing malicious, but there are many passive and active ways to get information from the most important people in your company. Use this data to bring on new personnel. If you've evaluated your own team, you should be able to understand what a new team member will bring or add to the dynamic that exists. We're about to wrap up here, but transitioning away from evaluation is active and passive team building. The process never ends. Active team building is working internally to maintain your team. Essentially, you're building around them. You've got your pieces in place. What else can you add to make them more successful? Passive team building is really what we do a lot in athletics. We're banking and knowing and understanding that personnel changes will be happening and doing the legwork in the background to replace any and everyone. Sounds cruel and cutthroat, but the alternative is not being prepared for a sudden departure or an injury or anything along those lines. In our world, coaches report to athletic directors, GMs, owners, fans to a degree, and they're not interested in hearing that we weren't able to perform at our best because we weren't ready to be missing a particular person. That gets us fired in our world. So you don't want to be stagnant with personnel. A good team today could be a poor one tomorrow. People are unpredictable, and that's not a bad thing, but think about it as simply as health. If a great employee suddenly falls ill and has to resign, what are you going to do? Be prepared for anything, and to do that, you have to be doing it passively. A great deal of time and money is spent attracting new applicants and dealing with the churn in the system associated with constantly replacing employees. If you do the work in the background and you do it in real time, you can minimize the negative impact on your organization. All right, to close everything out, no system is universal. The template might be, but the system should not be. Use your own metrics to evaluate your people to get the best results. Personnel should be a precision practice. No organization can run without people working in it. Everyone wants the best, but you should be looking for the best fit. Be realistic in your personnel practices. Think, if you're paying minimum wage, you're going to attract minimum wage quality. If you want changes, make changes to your practices before raising the expectations of those you have in it. Remove yourself from the process as best as you can. And by this, I mean don't personalize your evaluations. The evaluation is done to understand the people, not understand your feelings towards them. And last but not least, be prepared to misevaluate. There's no foolproof system, and people are difficult to judge. Even in sports where we have multiple years sometimes to get information, we still fail to get the evaluation right 100% of the time. Your goal should be to minimize those failures, especially in quantity, but mainly by having the stability in place to neutralize it. And on this page, we have the works cited.